I'm not sure how to begin this. I've read a lot here and debated for weeks whether to post. I'm a 34F, married for 10 years, and until recently, I thought I understood what kind of person I was. Now I can barely look at myself in the mirror. My husband discovered my affair 3 months ago. It started as a friendship with a coworker and grew into an emotional connection I didn't guard against. It felt exciting at first, like I was rediscovering a part of myself I thought was long gone. But that's no excuse to what I did. I betrayed my husband, and I crossed lines I never even did with my husband. It became physical once, in May. I thought that would be the end of it, that the guilt would stop me from going further, but it didn't. I told myself it wasn't that bad because it wasn't ongoing, but the truth is that I stayed emotionally tied to this man. Then it became physical 3 times more in late May, early June period. My husband confronted me in June after noticing how uninterested I'd become. I don't know why, but I guess the emotional turmoil in me was too much for me to handle. But I admitted to the emotional connection and, after hours of questioning, I confessed to the physical aspect too. He was devastated. I can still visualize the look on his face when I finally told him everything. We tried counseling. He wanted to see if there was a way forward, but the truth is, I've sabotaged any chance of reconciliation. I didn't cut off contact with the other man, even when I told husband that I did so. I didn't because I wasn't sure what I wanted. I thought I needed time to sort out my feelings, whether I was in love with the other man or just infatuated. But all that did was twist the knife deeper. My husband asked me for one thing, and I couldn't give it to him. He became aware of the fact last week, and the fact that I had also had a physical encounter, not sex, with AP again during ongoing counseling. Now he's done. He told me last week that he's filing for divorce. I'm devastated. He said he doesn't recognize me anymore, and that stung because I don't recognize myself either. I thought I was a good person. I thought I'd never be capable of something like this again, but here I am. I destroyed my previous relationship due to a series of minor infidelities, no sex, and I swore I'd never repeat the behavior. When I met my husband, I thought I was finally given a chance at a good life. I vowed to myself I'd change. I don't even know anymore. I know I need to work on myself. I've been reading and trying to unpack how I let this happen. I see now that the affair was never about my husband or our marriage. It was about my own brokenness, my need for validation, my inability to face my emotions in a healthy way. I didn't want to admit I was struggling, so I sought comfort in the worst possible place. I don't expect sympathy, and I don't deserve it. I just needed to say this somewhere, to acknowledge what I've done out loud. I'm starting therapy on my own soon because I need to figure out how to become a better person, not for him, because it's too late for that, but for myself. Maybe someday, I'll be someone I can look in the mirror and not hate. Edit. Yes, I'm still clinging to the faintest hope that my marriage can be salvaged. He hasn't filed yet. I don't even know what I'd do if he files. Update. I got the divorce papers. It wasn't unexpected, but that didn't make it easier. Seeing my marriage reduced to legal language and signatures was a gut punch. And yet, what's been harder than the papers themselves is the way my husband has handled everything. I don't expect him to forgive me. I don't expect him to care about my pain. But the complete absence of empathy has caught me completely off guard. I know I broke him. I know I don't deserve kindness from him, but I never thought he'd forget that I'm still human too. I've been having a hard time processing guilt, shame, and just generally struggling trying to figure out lodgings and finances. But instead of any sort of understanding, I've been met with nothing but silence, indifference, and occasionally extreme anger. I needed help. I needed someone to see that I wasn't just a selfish, heartless person who set out to destroy my own life. But he didn't. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe this is just how betrayed spouses cope. Maybe it's easier to see me as one-dimensional, as irredeemable, but it still hurts. I've read so much about how betrayed spouses struggle with empathy for waywards, and I understand it on a logical level. I know I destroyed his life with my choices, but I wasn't ready for how quickly I became nothing to him. No one talks about what it's like to be the wayward spouse who also has trauma. It's like the moment you cheat, nothing in your past matters anymore. I grew up in a household where love was conditional, where my father's alcoholism shaped every moment of my childhood. I learned early on that emotions were unpredictable, that love could turn into anger in an instant, that sometimes survival meant shutting down. I carried that into adulthood without realizing it. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed in my marriage. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. And when I finally found someone who made me feel seen, I latched on instead of doing the hard work of confronting what was missing in myself. I'm not excusing my choices. I know I crossed a line, that I caused pain. But I also know that when I was at my lowest, I had no one. My husband, who I once thought would be my partner in everything, couldn't give me even an ounce of grace. Not even enough to say, "I don't forgive you, but I see that you're hurting too." Instead, he locked me out, as if I had never existed. I see people talking about healing, about accountability, about doing the work. But what does that look like when the only thing you feel is shame? When there's no path forward, no second chance? What does change even mean when no one will ever believe you're capable of it? I tried therapy, but even there, it felt like I was supposed to only focus on what I did to him, on the ways I needed to make amends, on the steps I should take to ensure I never do this again. No one asked about why I ended up in that place to begin with. No one cared about the damage that existed long before my affairs, the damage that shaped how I saw myself, how I sought out validation, how I let something escalate that should have never started in the first place. I don't know what happens next. The divorce will go through and I'll officially become someone's ex-wife, another failed relationship, another person who won't speak my name except with disgust. I'm supposed to be learning, growing, becoming better, but I just feel abandoned. Story 2, me 30 female, with my husband, 32 male duration, having trouble with side crushes. My husband and I have been happily married for 7 years or so, though we've had some pretty stressful ups and downs. For some reason, I find myself every now and then coming across crushes. Usually it is someone who I work with and have things in common with. It's only happened a couple times, actually. Unfortunately, this is always reciprocated and then it gets awkward and distracting. I don't really know how to handle and move on in these situations. I'll be the first to admit I can definitely be a charming, flirty person. I also am a pretty attractive person that tends to get a lot of attention. It is hard to stop this part of my personality, despite being married. My husband also doesn't have jealousy issues in this regard and has never had an issue with the way I act. I just evidently seem to find myself in these little crushes here and there. They're usually with very interested males who are also married or engaged, etc. I could certainly carry out an affair if I wanted to. I haven't. How do you combat this? What is a healthy way to get through this? Is this normal? It's good that you recognize this pattern and want to handle it responsibly. Having crushes while married is normal, but the way you navigate them matters. Ask yourself, why do these crushes happen? Are they about excitement, validation, or just chemistry? If they feel distracting or mutual, it may be worth examining if there's something missing in your marriage, even subtly, that you're unconsciously seeking elsewhere. Being flirty and charismatic isn't inherently bad, but if it leads to mutual attraction and awkward tension, it's a sign to set stronger boundaries. If these men are also married or engaged, the stakes are even higher. Avoid situations that allow emotional intimacy to develop, such as prolonged one-on-one conversations or personal sharing. Another thing to consider, are you drawn to the possibility of something happening, even if you don't intend to act on it? If so, redirect that energy into deepening your connection with your husband or finding other sources of fulfillment. Rather than seeing this as something to combat, try reframing it as something to better understand. Attraction is natural, but emotional discipline keeps marriages strong. You haven't crossed any lines yet, and by being proactive now, you can ensure you don't. If this continues to be a pattern, therapy could help explore why. Now, some comments: take some responsibility and develop a different pattern of interaction with men you work with. Don't flirt as much. Not only is it unprofessional, it leads to you being in these unfortunate situations. You can still be friendly and share a joke without flirting. Having crushes while in a long-term relationship is normal and healthy. How you handle them is the important part. You say your husband isn't jealous and you have never escalated a reciprocated crush beyond flirting, so from my perspective, I think you're fine. Take that flirty sexual tension and direct that sexual energy toward your husband. Flirting is like drinking alcohol. Some people can responsibly drink a glass or two here and there and always act responsibly, and alcohol doesn't cause any issues. Other people can't control themselves and can't stop after one, and will become blackout drunk if they're around alcohol. And the only way to not lose control is to avoid alcohol altogether. You need to figure out what kind of person you are with flirting. I think harmless flirting in a relationship is fine, but if you find yourself losing control or becoming too attached to the other guy, then you need to back off and perhaps not flirt at all.